Hello, hello, you wonderful human being, and welcome back to another episode of the Pursuit of Freedom podcast. I'm so excited to have you here. And as usual, I'm also really excited to share this episode with you. I'm talking to Amit Chawla, who talks us through the autism diagnosis journey with his first son and the challenges that he and his wife faced in that diagnosis journey and beyond. We cover so many topics. We're really doing a deep dive. We're talking about person first versus identity first language, spotting the early signs, dealing with feelings of denial as a parent, and also the strains it puts on a relationship when your child has autism. But then moving on to how he and his wife found a new normal and how they've even managed to find purpose through this experience. In fact, they now see the challenges they've been through as a blessing in disguise. How powerful is that? I talk quite a bit at the beginning of this episode because I'm just so excited to talk to Amit. Looking back, I wish I let him talk a bit more. But as the episode goes on, he really gets more space to share his story. So please enjoy and let me know what you think of it. Let's roll the intro. G'day and welcome to the Pursuit of Freedom podcast. I'm your host, Rosie Burrows, and I'm on a journey to find my freedom so that I can help you do exactly the same. Join me each week as I share the stories of everyday people who have found their own paths to freedom. I'm not going to focus on job titles and accolades because I don't care about that stuff, and neither should you. I want to uncover what truly makes you tick. Who are you when you step away from society's expectations and follow your heart? I still haven't figured it out yet. Have you? Either way, buckle up because it's going to be one hell of a ride. Amit, I'm really excited for this conversation. And I know, we've chatted before this, and I really want people listening to hear your journey, both for you and also, as a family unit in terms of your son, who I believe is now 13 and has an autism, or who has autism. Mm-hmm. But before we get into that diagnosis journey and some of the challenges and, how things have changed over time, I wanted to talk about something that's been playing on my mind recently. Because, I have a friend actually who has autism and an ADHD diagnosis. So I've, done research into it to try to better understand it. And there's a lot of conversation around how the language we use. And I don't know how familiar you are with this, but, there's people who believe in person first language. So saying, person with autism, and then identity first language. So saying, I'm autistic, or that person's autistic. And my background is a teacher, and we were always trained to use this person-first language. That child has autism. But the more reading I've done, I've actually learnt that a lot of people in the autistic community prefer identity-first language. So they like to identify as autistic, which I found surprising. Like, that wasn't something I was aware of. And there's actually this survey, results of a survey that was done in 2022, and they surveyed over 11,000 people, and over 4,000 of them were autistic, and over half of them preferred to be identified as autistic. 11% preferred to call themselves a person with autism, and then about a quarter of them didn't mind. But I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on it, because it seems like there's a lot of conversation going on in this space. And I think there's sometimes a lot of anger around it from people in the community. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I would think person first makes more sense. A person himself or herself is a person first. And whatever condition they have is secondary, right? A person should be treated as any other person. And if a person has some kind of disability, that should always take a secondary position compared to the person. Now, I do agree. A lot of people use the term autistic, or my son is autistic, or think about a person who's autistic having such a difficult life. You've heard all of that. And I would say, I, as a person who's part of the special needs committee, whose son has autism, I am personally kind of neutral. Uh,
Mm.
it's probably for people who are outside of it, uh, that are more touchy, or
Right. Yeah.
yeah, right. For me, whatever people say, it's not going to change what I think about a person who has autism, right? So I'm neutral.
Yeah.
If I'm asked to choose, I'll choose person first. But other
Mm.
than that, I think it's I would say nothing that I would worry about. There are so many other things that you think about and you worry about.
Right.
This is the least of our concern.
Yeah, right. Yeah. It's it's easy, isn't it, to get hung up on the intricacies. And
Yeah,
you know, I think the decision I've come to is that if there's someone I'm talking to who has autism, I'm just going to ask what their preference is. You know, if they like
yeah,
to be called autistic, I'll just respect that. And when I talk about it, I tend to say has autism. Like, I feel more comfortable with that. So,
yeah. Same. I
yeah.
do the same thing. A person with some kind of disability. That's how I like to address as well. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, well, that's good to know. I guess in this conversation, then, if you're comfortable with me to say, you know, your son
yeah,
has autism rather than
yeah,
autistic. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, can you talk us through the diagnosis journey? Because, you know, as I mentioned, your son's 13, but this has been a long journey for your family. So, can you take us back and just talk us through what it was like, what happened?
Yeah. So let's go all the way back. 2009 is when he was born.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Uh, it was a planned pregnancy. My wife and I waited for 5 years. We thought the time was right.
mm-hmm,
Let's go for a kid. Uh, things were normal. The pregnancy was normal. The delivery was normal. Uh, it was a C-section. Things were okay. My wife had a little bit of postpartum, but that's to be expected. A lot of
mm,
moms go through that phase. Uh, it was about, I think, 9 months or 10 months is when my wife started noticing that my son, his name is Ishan, that
mm-hmm,
Ishan wasn't tracking to the milestones that kids tend to, right? There are books out there that clearly tell you that, okay, by this month your child should be doing this. As they
mm,
grow older, by 15 months they should be doing this, they should be babbling, and they should start talking and all those things. So about 9, 10 months, my wife started noticing a little bit, but again, it's too early to say anything.
mm,
About, I think, a year and a half, things were a little bit more noticeable. My son wasn't speaking
right.
much. He was babbling, but again, delayed in his speech.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
At about 22 months, uh, we were in San Diego, California. Our concern reached to a level that we went and booked an assessment with a therapist, I think, or a child
mm,
specialist who do this kind of evaluation and help you understand what's going on. So it was about 22 months. They did evaluation. It was an hour-long evaluation. Uh, our son was able to understand. He was able to follow instructions.
Mm-hmm.
He was able to attend to the therapist. The only thing was he was not able to speak much. So
Right.
even at that evaluation, they said that things are normal. His understanding is good, following instruction is good.
Mm-hmm.
There were no other signs. It's just speech, and kids sometimes do have delayed speech, so you don't have to worry about. So that was 22 months. Uh, then about 5 6 months later, we moved to Boston, Massachusetts, because of my job. And again, my wife was really worried. She was seeing other kids around her who
Mm.
were progressing well, who were performing at a level that is expected, and our son was not. And at that time, uh, I relented. I would say that I gave significant pushback to my wife.
Mm.
I did not listen to her concerns. In hindsight, I should have paid more attention. She went through months of agony, me ignoring her concerns, and she suffering through all of this on her own.
Mm.
But that was hindsight. So around 20, let's say, uh, 2.5, or I would say about between 2.5 and 3 years of age, we did another evaluation. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
there is something called early intervention where you can book it. It's a non-profit agency, a government agency. You ask them, you tell them that you are concerned about your child progressing at a normal rate. They come home, they play around with the kid, and then make an assessment.
Mm-hmm.
So we did this home assessment, and the lady who came was very quick to tell us that things are not normal, that your
Mm.
child has developmental delays.
Mm-hmm.
And she asked us to further consult a neurologist uh, to further do an evaluation.
Right.
Uh, uh, and then about, I think, 2 years and 10 months is when we got an appointment uh, with a renowned doctor here in Boston, specializing in special needs.
Mm-hmm.
And she gave us the news that your son has what we call PDD-NOS, pervasive developmental delay, none other specified. Uh,
Right.
so at such a young age, that's the diagnosis they give because they are not sure how things are going to further
Mm-hmm.
uh, surface.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but at that time, it was clear that the diagnosis was there. I was of two minds. It was obviously heart wrenching to
Mm.
see that, okay, our son has a type of disability where his development is delayed.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, However, I mean, we had hope also. Uh, on one side, yes, we got a diagnosis. We were also worried about having our son labeled. That, okay, a
Mm-hmm.
diagnosis means that, okay, you are now being labeled. How will that be seen in the school system? But then our son's pediatrician kind of told us that uh, in many cases, it's good to get the diagnosis because then you are able to get services.
Right.
You are able to talk to insurance agencies and get all the relevant services that your son may need. So that was 2 years, 9 months. Uh, Between then and 3 years, there was a moment where our son started speaking. He was speaking in sentences also at some
Wow.
point.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and then within a span of, I would say, 6 months, he had major regression. Slowly, his speech went away. Uh, I remember at some point he used to go and look at the car plate numbers and recite those for us. He was very clear in
Mm.
his vocals. Uh, we thought that he was good with numbers, he was good with reading and all that, but then
Mm-hmm.
slowly all that faded away.
Mm.
So about 3 years and few months after we saw that major regression, and that's when things started sinking in that we might be in for a long haul here.
Mm-hmm.
That's when we consulted a couple of other doctors. Uh, the doctor that did the initial diagnosis was in a way telling us that our son is in a much better situation. He doesn't have any kind of behaviors. There are other kids who are in much worse situation. You should feel blessed. You should consider yourself lucky that he has autism, but it is on the milder side.
Mm.
Um, so it was good to hear those things, but slowly our worst nightmares started to come true. We started seeing behaviors. We started to see how his speech completely vanished,
Mm.
how normal autistic behaviors came to light. Uh, Hand flapping, walking on tippy toes, making noises, uh, all became normal to
Mm-hmm.
us. Over time, uh, I would say 4 to 6, things became a little bit more tougher. He started going to the public school. Public school wasn't able to handle him. We switched towns. We moved to another town where we found out that special needs services are better. Uh, Moved to that town, started getting services. Again, we saw, okay, maybe things are getting better. It's said, and it has come true for many kids, that if you get right services earlier on, it can make a difference.
Mm.
For us, unfortunately, that did not happen.
Right.
Our son went to the special needs class. It was a separate class because of his needs. The school system tried their best. The school was until the afternoon, but then there were challenges after school. How do we
Mm.
provide services to our son
Mm.
um, after school? And again, our goal was to provide him as many services as possible. We didn't want to lose time. We want to
Mm.
make sure that we are able to get services, we are able to help him in whatever way we can. But uh, things were not going our way.
One part of that story that stood out is the specialist saying, you should be, feel lucky and it's just mild autism.
Yeah.
But then, your son lost his speech and those behaviors started coming out. Like, how did that feel for you and your wife? What were the emotions like at that time?
Things were extremely tough, extremely tough.
Mm.
There were uh, days where we used to think how we can help this kid,
Mm-hmm.
and uh, things got worse even further. So up to 6 he was a small kid, but then after 6, as he started becoming a little bit bigger, his
Mm-hmm.
behaviors changed uh, for the worse.
Mm.
He became aggressive towards others. He became aggressive towards himself. And there were days when he'll cry for hours, and there was no way for us to find out what was going on.
Mm.
He'll just throw his body all over the bed. He'll turn the bed upside down and keep crying. And those were the days and nights that were the worst, I would say. Think of a family member
Mm.
who's just crying without being able to tell what's going on,
Mm-hmm.
and you are trying your best to soothe that family member, right? You
Mm-hmm.
are giving all kind of medications, you are consulting all kind of medical practitioners. We consulted a pain specialist who's known to work with kids without words, very young kids, and they are able to find out. And I remember asking this doctor that how would you or anyone treat a pet or a dog, right? Just think that they are not able to tell you what's going on
Mm-hmm.
and they are crying in pain. What would you do? And that doctor is a very specialized doctor. They have been doing this for several years, and all he had to say was that it was a behavior. He
Mm-hmm.
couldn't tell us if it was some kind of medical issue going on.
Right.
He said it was behavior, and it was hard for us to believe.
Mm.
Extremely hard for us to believe that how can a child start crying for no reason and can then keep crying for hours,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and then even, I mean, he would go asleep while crying. That was the toughest period until he was 8.
Mm.
We tried to get services from outside. We tried to get therapists. However, uh, services are not easy to come by.
Okay.
Even though you have insurance paying for those services, the service providers are not available. Uh, the therapists that we were able to find used to just leave within a month or two.
Wow.
The agencies were not able to provide us regular services at home. We even tried center based services where we tried to send him to a center for a few hours, but even that didn't work out for us. I think it was probably some, I think during summer vacation, schools were off, and we tried to find services for him. We used to send him to this center-based service center, and even they gave up. They said that they were not able to handle him.
Wow.
And at one point, when I went to pick him up, I found him cornered in a cubicle, all blocked away from
Oh.
other kids, just because he was too disruptive and they were not able to handle him.
Wow.
That's when we realized that we were losing this battle. There is
Mm-hmm.
no way for us to provide the services that he needed. He needed 24 by 7 support. He
Mm-hmm.
needed specialists
Mm-hmm.
to take care of him.
Mm-hmm.
And we realized that we were doing him a disservice by not seeking out an outplacement. Outplacement means a private school
Right.
outside of public setting. So that private school, we had to hire an educational consultant. We consulted an attorney. We had to push the public school system to provide us these services. Now, here in the States, all kids are entitled for free and appropriate education
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
until they are 22, which is a significant help for families like ours.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, what this free and appropriate education means is that if public school system is not able to provide the services or not able to provide the educational support that a kid needs, they will pay for the private school.
Right. Yeah.
So we had to do a little bit of convincing. We had to tell them that our child is not progressing, his behaviors are out of control, we are not able to get all these services from outside. And for him to make progress, we do need a private school. So that happened. And when he started private school, within 2 months, we realized that he needs a residential support.
Right.
That's when I told you the story about how we found out that even after the school, we were not able to find services for him,
Mm.
and we were doing disservice to him by not providing him the support that he needed. And it was the toughest decision of our lifetime, that we had to decide on his outplacement, his residential school. So
Mm.
that was when he was eight, 8 years and 3 months, 8 years and 4 months is when we had to send him to a residential school. I was on an easier side. My wife had a very tough journey.
Mm.
She was home with him. I mean, she used to work when we were in San Diego, when until he was 2 years and 9 months, and then she left her job. She decided to focus on him.
Mm-hmm.
She used to be at home, taking him to all the therapies, taking him to number of different centers, to different schools, different doctor appointments and all, and seeing him regress, seeing him further deteriorating in behaviors and conditions was a significant uh, hardship on
Mm-hmm.
her.
Mm-hmm.
She went through a bad phase of depression. She went through a bad shape of anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
She did have to consult a psychiatrist for a long duration.
Mm.
Uh, Now, that was until we sent him to the residential school. Even then, parents are the best advocates for their kids.
Yes.
No one else will care for your kid as much as you would,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you have to be on top of each and every decision, each and every step that you are deciding for your child. So at a residential school, we have tried our best to keep up to date as to what is going on,
Mm-hmm.
what programming is planned for him, how they are treating him. I would say he is at the best possible place for his needs. The teachers there are very caring, very
Mm.
loving. The the programming he's getting there is amongst the best in the country, if not in the world. The institution he's staying at is a 40-year-old institution, well respected.
Mm.
Now, he's been in this group home for 5+ years now.
Mm-hmm.
One good thing is his residential uh, place, or the group home where he lives, is about what 35 miles. So it takes us about 35 minutes
Okay.
one way. So we are able to bring him home every Sunday for
Mm-hmm.
a few hours.
Mm-hmm.
He gets to spend good time with us. We take him out on vacation, overnight vacation, 2 3 times a year. It's not possible for him to fly because
Okay.
it's very distressing for him,
Mm-hmm.
and the kind of behaviors he has, it won't be possible for us to not disrupt an entire plane
Right.
uh, of passengers. So we've been trying to take him to vacations to
Mm-hmm.
nearby places. Things have been up and down. Behaviors come and go, issues come and go, toileting issues come and go. Overall, I would say things are a little bit better
Mm-hmm.
compared to how things were probably when he went to the residential school.
Hmm.
At that time, we were so hopeless. Things were bad, worse for a period in between, because of all the toileting issues, and crying came back. But then
Hmm.
again, things are have turned out for the better. So we have seen these swings so many times that
Yeah.
we don't trust. If things are going well, we know most of the times that it's temporary.
Right.
And at the same time, we try to remind ourselves that, okay, if things have turned out for the worse, we remind ourselves that, okay, this is, again, it's temporary, and things will improve. But
Mm.
it has been up and down for us all along.
Whilst I don't have children, I know that having a child is, it's a huge change, right, in your life. And, you and your wife went through that, and then there was the added change of your son getting that autism diagnosis and the long journey of even getting that diagnosis, and then the struggle of, the behaviors that were coming out and all the challenges you and your wife were facing. And you've just mentioned how it's very much up and down. And I'd love to hear, how do you and your wife look after yourselves? Because I imagine that if you're not in a good place, it's really hard to advocate for your son and be there for him. So what do you do to make sure you're in good shape?
When our son went to the residential school, he was 8 years and 4 months, uh, and he was diagnosed when he was 3. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
while both me and my wife were struggling to get him services at the public school system, we, or I would say, I realized that things cannot continue the way they are. My wife's mental health was getting worse, uh,
Mm-hmm.
and our son's situation wasn't getting any better. That's when I thought probably best thing for us would be to go for another child, uh, be it adoption or be it our own child. Because one thing is, we wanted to have another person in our family who can
Mm-hmm.
probably take care of our older one as we get older, or
Right.
as and when we go away.
Mm-hmm.
That was one reason. Second reason was, I wanted my wife to start focusing on something else. It
Mm-hmm.
was too much of our son with disability, where we were not able to help him much, and that
Mm-hmm.
inability to help, that helplessness, was making situation even worse.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know whether you know or not, if you have a child with autism, the
Mm-hmm.
chances of second child having autism are significantly higher compared
Right.
to you having a neurotypical child, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
knowing that, it was a significant risk
Mm-hmm.
that I was ready to take, because of selfish reasons, I would say, right? One
Mm-hmm.
was, wanted someone to take care of our child with disability. Second, wanted to have some kind of control, some kind of normalcy in our life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the downside I could think of was, what if our second child also has similar disabilities?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, the only way I could convince myself and my wife was, the The upsides are much higher. The downsides
Mm-hmm.
are there. Yes, there is a chance that our second child may have similar kind of disability, but we have gone through so much. We know the system. We know how to navigate this entire
Mm-hmm.
system. We are much better prepared to help another child if he or she has the same disability.
Mm-hmm.
So it was not easy to convince my wife to go for a second one. I prevailed, uh, and luckily, our second one is a neurotypical child.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, when our older one went to the residential school, he was 2 years old. He doesn't have much memories of him being home. But our younger one, his name is Veer. We are trying our best to raise him as a very kind human being, and we are somewhat successful. We can see that he can relate to the kind of disabilities that other kids may have. He
Mm-hmm.
was recently recognized, actually, he was recognized twice this year for being kind to other people in his class.
Yeah, wow.
So we are trying to see, and that's what we've been telling him. If nothing else, as long as he's kind to others, that is all that we ask for him from him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So he has been good. Kids being kids, he's going to be turning 8. Uh, we try to remind him time and time again that there are kids with different abilities. You
Mm-hmm.
have to make sure that you treat each and every person nicely. We remind him time and time again that there are people around who don't have the same kind of mental faculties like others. You
Mm-hmm.
have to respect each person for their abilities. So let's see. Our hope is that he will grow up as a kind human being. Whether he'll be ready to take older son's responsibility or not, we don't know. Things change, lives change,
Yeah,
people have their
yeah.
own lives. But let's see. Our goal is, as long as we are being kind, as long as we are able to pass on our qualities to him, hopefully things will turn out well.
Yeah. It sounds like he's well on his way to, being a really empathetic person, which is amazing. And I think the fact that you and your wife are teaching him these lessons and that he has a beautiful brother who has autism, that he's exposed to things I think that a lot of children aren't, and his understanding of people's differences is, I imagine, just so much more vast, which I think
Yeah.
is beautiful. You mentioned before that, before you and your wife decided to have your second child, the thought of someone to look after Ishan when you and your wife aren't here, I imagine that was a pretty, I mean, that's a full on kind of thought to have, isn't it? That I think many parents and families don't have to do that future planning.
Yeah, I mean that is something I would say parents who have kids with severe disabilities, parents who know that their child will need their support for their entire life, they think about this day in and day out.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the most common things that I've heard from other parents who are in similar situation is that all of us would love to live longer than our child who has disability.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We know that no one else would care as much as we do.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to make sure that our child, as long as he's living, being cared for, is being taken care of, right? So that has been our motto. This So our son Ishan went to residential school in, I think, October 16 of 2017. 2017 is when I turned 40 and I started running. I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to make sure that I'm in my best of health. I've been exercising regularly since then. I think it was November of 2018, I ran my first marathon. Uh,
Wow. Yeah.
and I've been working out regularly. My goal is to run a Boston Marathon next year. Ever since our son Ishan went to the residential school, both me and my wife found time on our hands, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So much of our time and energy was focused on Ishan that all of a sudden we had ample time. And I started running. Uh, we had to decide as to what my wife, her name is Pooja, what Pooja has to do. She
Mm-hmm.
decided to go back and advance her legal studies. She has a legal education back from India. She was working as a paralegal in San Diego, California, but she never
Mm-hmm.
sat for an exam to become a lawyer in the States. She
Okay.
is a lawyer from India, but
Mm-hmm.
she never sat for an exam in the States. So after our son went through the residential school, she went back to school, got additional credits so that she is eligible to sit for what we call bar exam. It's the
Mm-hmm.
exam
Mm-hmm.
that attorneys have to take. So she studied for 2 years, went through all those courses, then started preparing for the bar exam. Uh, December of 2021 is when she passed her bar exam. So she is a licensed attorney here in Massachusetts. She's been working as an attorney for more than a year now. The moment she passed the bar exam, she decided to go for higher education. So not only she's working full time as an attorney, she's also doing a part-time master's in law to further specialize in special needs law
Wow.
and elder law. So she's been busy focusing on legal education, and she's further specializing in special needs law as we speak. And I've been focusing my energy on the financial planning side of
Okay.
special needs. So over the years, I've become a certified financial planner professional and also chartered special needs consultant. Our goal is to help the special needs community together. Her
Mm-hmm.
focusing on the legal side of the matters. I'm focusing on the financial side of the matters, and together, in the future, I mean, I do have a full time job. My full time job is a software product manager
Mm-hmm.
for wealth management industry. So it's kind of related, but not proper planning. But
Mm-hmm.
longer term, when I retire, I do plan on joining my wife and completely, fully supporting the special needs community in all special needs comprehensive planning.
That's amazing. I mean, it really sounds like you and your wife have found such powerful purpose. You know, you're
It is.
focusing on your
It
health,
is.
you've started a business, your wife has become a licensed attorney, um, you know, and is now studying a master's. And it's so beautiful to hear that something so positive has come out of what was and what still is such a hardship and a challenge for you both.
And that is what I and my wife discussed, that it's a blessing in disguise for us.
Mm,
Without our son, we would not have found that purpose. Uh,
mhm,
we now know what we are going to be doing and how we are going to be doing and how we are going to be supporting others. And we know that maybe 20, 30 years down the line, we would have done something, something much bigger than ourselves, something
Mm.
that would have, that will be making difference in so many other lives. Let's see. I mean, that's the hope. That's the hope. Life has its ups and downs, has its
Mm.
surprises, but that's what we are hoping, that okay, over the next couple of decades, we will be able to touch many lives. We will be able to help others who are going through the same journey, who will be going
Mhm.
through the same journey.
Mhm.
And we are able to come quite far in this journey. And we believe we are in a situation that we can help others.
You'll be leaving such a beautiful legacy for both your sons and I think the community at large, which is amazing. What a special way to live. And sort of to wrap up, one thing I really want to touch on is I'm sure some people listening are going through a similar journey and perhaps haven't found or come to the realization that it can be a blessing in disguise. What wisdom can you offer to those people in terms of finding their purpose and actually finding the joy in life again?
It's hard.
Yeah.
There is no easy way. Uh, we believe that we have found a purpose. We
Hmm.
believe that we are trying to do something good. We believe that whatever we are doing started for selfish reasons. We
Hmm.
wanted to help our son in best possible way, and we had right background to focus on the right thing. So my wife had legal education, I had financial education. So we tried to look at what we had. We tried to look at what we can do. This came out of selfish reasons. Now, whether it becomes much bigger, that has to be seen, to be honest. So,
Mm.
what I would suggest people is to not lose hope. Always try to seek help. There are different ways to seek help, right? You can seek help for your
Mm.
mental condition, you can seek help for financial purposes, you can seek help for legal things also. But even what you should focus on, try to identify it yourself, try to see how you can position yourself to help not only your other family members but also yourself. Because as we say, until and unless you are caring for yourself, you will not be able to care for others, right?
Absolutely.
So you have to keep that in mind when you want to provide the best possible care for your family member with disability. You also have to make sure that you are seeking the best possible care for yourself, because only then
Mm.
you will be able to position yourself to help your special one. Yes, there can be challenges with the resources. There can be challenges that I cannot think of. But if you put your mind to it, there are ways. There are a
Mm.
lot of good people, a lot of nonprofits out there who will be more than happy to guide you and to help you move in
Mm.
the right direction.
Yeah, that's such a powerful message. You know, I think two things I've really got out of what you just said there is don't be afraid to ask for help. And underlying that is you're not alone. I'm sure this journey can feel very lonely at times, but
Yeah.
there is support out there. If, you know, it can be tricky to find if you don't know where to look, but it is out there. And I loved what you said about not only seeking the best possible care for your loved one, but also yourself. Like that's powerful. It's so important, and a lesson that I'm constantly, you know, learning and relearning. So I think that's a really powerful one. I just want to say, Amit, thank you so much for your honesty and sharing your story and the challenges, and also, you know, some of the positivity that has come from that. I think it's important to recognize the light, you know, and not to minimize our challenges or your struggle, but because there's balance in life, right? There is the darkness and the light, and things
Yeah.
do go up and down. And, you know, something you were mentioning earlier is that it is temporary. You know, there'll be
Yeah.
good times, the not so good times, but
Yeah.
it's cyclical and it will come and go. Before we leave, is there a final message you'd like to share with people?
All I would say is just keep going. Just keep going. Try to make every day count. Uh, Especially for us where we have our kids who are going to depend on us. You have
Mm-hmm.
to keep progressing. You have to make sure you are trying to make their lives better in some or the other form with each day that you can contribute. That's all I would say. Keep going through this journey. Keep asking for help as and when needed. Keep
Mm-hmm.
making every day count.
Beautiful. And on that note, thank you so much, and I hope to talk to you again soon.
Likewise, Rosie.
If this episode resonated with you at all, could I please ask that you share it with a friend who you think could get value from it? And whilst you're doing that, make sure you follow and subscribe to the podcast so that you never miss another episode. And whilst you're following or subscribing, please leave us a rating, preferably 5 stars, and also a written review. Doing each of these things is going to help this podcast reach more people and impact more lives, which is, at the end of the day, is what we're here to do. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Remember, you matter, you're worth it, and you are so capable. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you next week.